Hi everybody, it's great to be back here again on Friday. We have a double portion, Vayakhel Pekudei. We are thus going to complete the book of Exodus this week. On Shabbat, we're also going to read about the red heifer, and we're going to bless for the month of Nisan coming in. Wow, we are so rich in events this Shabbat. Wow, let's be happy about it. But I want to focus on the particular opening of this week's portion, where Moshe Rabbeinu gathers. What does it say? Vayakhel Moshe et Kol Adat B'nai. So Moshe Rabbeinu gathers the entire congregation of Israel, and he says to them, these are the things that God commanded you to do. What is he referring to? Of course, the building of the tabernacle. Okay, for 6 days you shall do work, which means we're allowed to work on the 6 days. But on the 7th day, wow, Shabbat is almost coming in, we can't do any work. And it says it's to be holy and it should be a day of rest. And anyone who does work on that day shall die. The next verse, in verse number 3, it says, you shall not light a fire in all your inhabitants on the Sabbath. The question right away we must ask ourselves is, what's going on over here, right? Well, first of all, there are 39 different kinds of work that we can't do on Shabbat. If you want to see what they are, go in the tractate of Shabbat in the Oral Law, and it outlines every one of those particular labors. So we're not going to go through them now. But the question at hand is, well, first to explain, we learn out those different 39 labors from the actual building of the tabernacle. What went into building the tabernacle was prohibited on the Sabbath. Very clear. But the question at hand is, why does the Torah single out, you can't light a fire on Shabbat? Lighting a fire is just one of those other kinds of labors. So why was it singled out? And the answer is brought down in the Talmud. It brings two major opinions. And the major opinion, which is accepted for our, we say halacha, for Jewish law, is that to teach us about all the other ones is a law, something that was singled out. It wasn't singled out for itself, but to be a rule to the. And what is the rule? That these are all serious prohibitions, and one who transgresses will have to pay the consequences. And we know, according to Torah law, for example, if someone does it, let's talk about if someone does it really not knowing. Let's say someone does it accidentally, not knowing he's not allowed to do it on the Sabbath, he has to bring a sacrifice, a sin offering. And if, for example, if he did all 39 of these labors without knowing he's not allowed to do it, then he has to bring 39 different sacrifices. Think about that, sin offerings for what he did. It's also a very serious situation. If someone did it on purpose, without witnesses, he's liable to being cut off from the nation, or etc. I'm not going to get involved in all the punishments that deal with Shabbat, because it's a very grave thing as well, as far as capital punishment, which I'm not going to talk about now. That's another topic in itself, understanding that issue in itself in the Torah. But we see how the Torah views this as a very, very serious transgression. Why is Shabbat so important? Why can't we, God forbid, transgress the Shabbat? Why can't we light a fire? Why can't we do work? What is so special about that whole concept? And here, we're not going to get into this discussion in one sitting, but I want to mention just a few beautiful words of Rav Hirsch. And he writes like this, he says, Lo tevaru eish, you shall not light a fire. And he says, Havarat eish eina lechora pu'ula yotzeret. Lighting a fire is something, on the first glance, it doesn't really create something, right? Ele pu'ula harsanit. It's a destructive action. It burns, it destroys. And he says on the other side, when a person brings fire, when he makes a fire, it's a special power, right? It's a special energy that allows man his dominion over the physical world. So he's saying there's something very special in fire. He's basically answering the question, why could it be that fire was singled out? And the answer is that fire has that hint behind it, that it's a power that God gave us as individuals to control over the physical world. So what is he trying to say over here? Just by fire, a man can actually go ahead and produce all kinds of things he does in this world. We know how there are different forms of fire, right? Nuclear energy is also fire. Hint, hint, what's going on in the world. The power that God is really giving us in the world to control nature. We have to, at the end of the day, after we use this wonderful power and gift that Hashem has given us, and this, of course, is only one example of the energy of fire, but all the beauty of labor in the world, that what we can do in our work of 6 days of work, there's a day that comes, it's called Shabbat, and that Hashem says to us, it's time to shut down the engines. And we have to realize and say that all of nature that I give you control over as man, to work during those days. But when it comes time for the Shabbat, you are now you're entering another realm, a spiritual realm, and therefore you are declaring your subservience to me, to God, by not doing any labor on Shabbat. And that's the beauty, of course, that's the beauty of Shabbat. Realizing that all our whole lives and everything we do, we are focusing and all for Hashem, and to show us that we are declaring and we are announcing to the world that God, the creator of the world, has given us the dominion over this physical world. But we have to realize at the end of the day that everything comes from Hashem, and it's all a gift from Hashem. And therefore, Shabbat, we are declaring our complete subservience to God. And that's how we shut down. Everything shuts down. But what's really amazing is that here, we are building God's temple, right? Here in the Torah is teaching us the laws of Sabbath, relating to the building of His temple, of His house. But here, no, God is saying, even though you're building my temple, you must shut it all down. You can't build the temple on the Sabbath. Wait till the Sabbath is over and get back to the building of the temple. But what's even more interesting is that although we can't build the temple on Shabbat, but the divine service that went into sacrifices inside the temple, it was allowed to labor on Shabbat, which was really amazing. And that's another question we have to ask ourselves. And that comes from the fact that the temple was really entering, the realm of the temple was entering a future state. Really not a dominion, or I would say, not a dimension, a worldly dimension anymore. We were really entering a situation where the world, it represents a rectified situation of another realm when the entire world will be rectified. And therefore the laws that apply in this physical world, different laws apply in the temple. And therefore it's so interesting to know that on Shabbat in the temple, sacrifices were offered to Hashem. Although, if you would do this in your own, for your own personal benefit, it would be the most serious transgression. On the other hand, it was allowed to be done in the temple itself, because that represented everything in a realm way beyond this world, in a realm where eventually the world will reach its rectification, right? The temple world is another world where it represents that Garden of Eden, that final, how do we say, goal of the entire creation of the world, to bring the humanity to raise up to another state in itself. And therefore the laws don't apply anymore. Things happen in a different light as well. Well, anyway, this concept, this beautiful idea, is reflected in lighting a fire. Fire, of course, has in itself, when you look at a fire and you watch that fire burn, that always has a spiritual essence to it, of connecting to that spiritual world, looking at, it says, Ner Adam Nishmat, it says, Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam. A ner, a candle, represents the soul of a person. Because a fire represents, the fire blazing represents the soul. That spiritual concept teaches us this great lesson. We just touched upon something very small about understanding the deepness behind this world, the Shabbat, and the temple. Shabbat Shalom, B'Sarot Tovot, Yeshuot Menachamah.